and Jason. Here we are. It's taken us a few months to get it together. Staying in place was a little bit rough for us, I suppose, related to doing our cooking videos.
Hi.
So we love your idea of doing a breakfast, and something that we're working on. We try to do as much as we can from scratch, and so we decided that we would do breakfast sausages.
All right.
So we're going to walk you through the ingredients and the machine that we're going to use. It's got an amazing background story. So when we first moved to Willamina, Oregon, we have a neighbor across somebody the street who liked to purchase used stuff and then sell it and have these big community garage sales. Anyway, Bill and I went up to her house.
They may know Jenny.
Do you know Jenny Wymore? She lives across the street, and she has about 3.5 acres there. So I made a lot of tamales at the time, and using my KitchenAid was a lot of work because I could only make so many batches of masa. Long and short of it is, we were looking at Hobarts and they were way out of our price range, and lo and behold, she had a Hobart, an old Hobart that she was selling for $75, was it, Bill?
75.
And we talked her down to 50, and we brought it home, and Bill did some work on it, and that's what we're going to use to grind our pork, and that's also what I use to do our masa. It's a 12-quart Hobart, and Bill's going to show you that. And we got a really good deal on the meat grinder piece when we went to a wholesale warehouse for used and new kitchen items, and so we got this brand new. It doesn't fit exactly, but Bill's done a really good job of adjusting and rigging it. And then I caught it on fire, essentially, when I was trying to do something with it. So we've had to replace some parts. But for about $400, we have a, $3,500 machine with parts. So we feel really lucky. Anyway, we're going to walk you through the ingredients and show you how to make some. All right, so we have done a lot of research. Bill tends to sit and do tons of research, especially about the things that he's going to smoke, things like this that we're going to make. And you've seen our library, we have lots of books. So we're going to take a recipe that we found in this book, which I love, called Home Sausage Making. Susan Mahnke Perry and Charles D. Reavis. This is a super good book. And then we're going to add a few things of our own because we just like some additional flavor. We're going to use kosher salt, a little bit of milk, and we don't drink milk just because we don't. So, but we always have half and half or heavy cream in the house. So this is half and half with a little bit of water. Powdered mustard, dried sage. We did grow our own sage. We do every year. We have some ground black pepper that we grind from peppercorn, so it's nice and hot. Ground mustard, and with the breakfast sausage, we've got 1/4 cup of maple syrup. Not sure if that's going to be enough, but we're going to go with that. And then we've got 3 pounds of a lean pork that we cubed and froze. Generally, when you're making sausage, especially if you're going to use your KitchenAid as your primary grinding source, they tell you to freeze it so that it makes it easier for the meat to push through. I've already broken our KitchenAid meat grinder because one thing I also do is I buy pork fat, or we get pork fat from
It was high grade Asian plastic.
So we anyway, I was trying to render my own pork fat to make lard for tamales, and I busted all over the place. So that's why we're kind of going to the Hobart, even though we don't have a lot going on right now. So in here is 3 pounds of pork fat, which a lot of what we're reading, 3 pounds of the pork butt that's lean. But we also like to have a little bit more fat in our sausage, so we're adding, I believe we have 3.5 ounces of sausage in here, so about a 10%, a little over a 10% mix. And then our favorite tool in the entire kitchen is our Vidalia Chop Wizard. And we have a small onion that's been finely chopped using our Vidalia Chop Wizard. So the process is we're going to run the pork. Typically you would run the pork through a medium-sized disc, and we'll show you what those discs look like, and then you run it back through with the pork, and if you want, with the pork fat, and then at the same time you could run it back through again and add your spices. Or if you want to just grind your pork, you can manually put your spices in and mix them up by hand. I kind of like the process of doing both. One is nicely incorporating, and then the other one is just making sure everything works out real well. So the first thing that we're going to do, Bill's just got the small disc on here rather than going medium to small because we've cut our pork up into really small cubes. So we're going to go ahead and grind the pork. Then I'm going to grind the pork a little bit at a time with a little bit of fat and some of the spices going through, and then we'll mix it up. We are not putting our pork in casings. We do have a machine that we could do the casings, but we've chosen to just do patties for our breakfast sausage. Okay, we'll see in a minute. There's a little shelf that you put on top here, and that allows you to put the meat in, and then you have a little device that you're going to push the meat down through. And I will tell you that because I sort of blew up the machine, we may have to, Bill's going to come around because we may have to fiddle with this a little bit. So I'm going to pull the pork out, the pork fat out, and we're going to just go ahead and put all the pork on here because we don't have so much. We do have a lot more cut back here, but we're going to make some Italian sausage. So this is our breakfast sausage.
It's like a World War II biplane. Sometimes you have to spin the propeller.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Okay, so are they?
Should be working.
So we're just going to feed this through, and there is a, what do you call the thing that's in there? Now the reason why you want to use some fat, and I probably could do that right now, throw pieces of fat in there instead of, I mean, first of all, who doesn't love pork fat? But additionally,
Emerald says pork fat rules.
yeah. The other thing that's really important is that it's what holds everything together. So, see how fast this works? This would have taken me hours to do using our KitchenAid. It would have really been. So what I am going to do is I'm going to go ahead, as soon as this all feeds through, I'm going to add the spices, and I'm going to, so I've got this all the way through. I'm going to let it run till nothing's going through. We started this out on a level 1 and it wasn't pushing through. So once this goes through, one of the things that they suggest that you do in order to clean this out, you'll read a lot of things where they want you to put an ice cube in there, and I think that we put our pork cubes in the freezer for a little while. That is really helpful. Another suggestion, like when I do the lard, it works for the lard, not so much for this. I'll tell you to put ice cubes. Once we're done, we're going to feed a little bit of bread into this, and it helps to pull the rest of the fat out and helps to clean your blade. Another thing that we do, because we live in Oregon, things are very damp up here, and the discs, and we'll pull this off and show you what, in fact, we probably have one. Hold on one moment. So I
Action shot.
I store these discs in rice and then in the freezer because I had to clean a lot of rust off of them, and I didn't want to have to do that anymore. So this is what's actually grinding the meat. This is a much larger hole than what we're using. So depending on what you're making and the kind of sausage that you're making, you're going to use a different size grinder. So what happens is there's a blade that pushes flat up against this and spins around and cuts the meat and pushes it through, and the meat gets cut at the size of the blade. So what we have for the breakfast sausage tends to be ground a lot more. So you can see it comes out in strips, and then ultimately we're gonna mash that up into patties. We're gonna use that for our dinner tonight. We're gonna have breakfast for dinner. The leftover stuff, what we can do is roll it up, wrap it up in some plastic wrap, put it in the freezer and let it freeze, and before it gets too hard, pull it out, cut it in slices, and then freeze the slices so that we have slices that we can use, unless we want to freeze this in a pound or 2 pounds. Now you know how much we love to make sausage gravy with our gravy and biscuits, our breakfast delight that you guys have partaken with us. And so we typically use about a pound of breakfast sausage to make that. So if that's what we want to do, we may just take this. We've got 3 pounds. We may make a couple of packages of pounds rather than worrying about slicing. Then additionally, as I said earlier, we could get there's a couple different kinds of casings you can get. You can get an animal casing and use that to make your sausage, or you can get a cellulose casing so that it's kind of like paperish, and then you would peel it off before you cook it in general.
And we have a sausage stuffing machine
Device.
But let me be the first to say that sausage casings are a pain in the ass.
But I still may try it with the Italian sausage. So now what we're going to do is we've got all of this. That's how quickly it ground that 3 pounds. So I'm going to go ahead and put that back in our hopper here. And I'm going to
We call it Dennis. Dennis hopper.
I hope they're not too young to know who he is. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to spread this out, I'm going to sprinkle spices on the top, and I'm going to run it through again. And then I'll still probably manage it. So the recipe didn't call for garlic, but who can live without powdered garlic? So we went ahead
And you know why.
We got to keep the vampires away. So I'm going to go ahead and I have all of the dry spices. I'm going to add the syrup to the top here and just kind of massage it in a little bit. And the milk.
Maple syrup, brown gold.
Yeah, it's very expensive stuff. And then the other thing that we need to do is we need to add the onion. Now, what I'm not sure of, I'm not going to put as much onion in as it called for because it sure seems like a lot. Going through the grinder, I don't want it to grind so much that all we taste is onion. Okay, so one more time through the grinder. So one of the things that whenever you research or read anything about sausages is if you want to make sure that the spices are exactly how you want them, you're going to want to cook a little piece, and then that way you can adjust the whole amount accordingly. Bill got a little bit excited and pulled a piece off before I was able to hand mix and get everything, make sure everything was incorporated equally. And it was good, that little piece. So, but this is the one, this little piece in the fryer. So we're going to give that a taste. And then we're going to go on and make our breakfast for dinner. Bill has baked up a couple of potatoes And we have duck eggs from Yamhill River Farms, which is probably less than a quarter of a mile up the road, and our homemade sausage. And we're gonna have a good dinner for breakfast. Breakfast for
We have
dinner.
fried up a little small patty. Certainly not adequate for a breakfast serving. And I'm cheated because I've already tasted it once, but this is really, really good. We did notice that by the comparing it to commercial sausage, it doesn't appear to be as much fat because it doesn't kick out a bunch of fat as you're cooking it. It didn't brown up with that same kind of golden brown on the outside, but it will if we saute it in a pan with a little bit of oil. It is actions speak louder than words. Okay, folks, here's the exciting epilogue that we usually provide with each episode. Here's our meal. Scrambled duck eggs. Here's our sausage patty, and I made some home fries, which are, Jason, it's a guy thing. You got your potatoes, green peppers, generally onion. We had a leftover leek, so I chopped that up into slices, and here we go. Let's start with the star of the show. You know, the other star of the show.
Wah, wah.
It's really good. It turned out really well. There's a hint of maple, but it's not sweet. And the other spices are they're mingling nicely to interrupt our video. Oh, but anyway, this is really good. You can, I don't know if you ever you can use a hand meat grinder. You can chop it if you were very patient and make your own sausage at home. It's been a time-tested thing for centuries. Back to the potatoes. I put 2 potatoes in the oven early today, baked them, and let them cool, and then made my breakfast potatoes. The main wisdom will tell people that although the restaurants generally do home fries with boiled potatoes, the best are made with baked potatoes. These subtle differences cannot be avoided. So, scrambled duck eggs, home fries, and homemade sausages. What's not to like?